Welcome to Christ Parency, the channel where we tackle misconceptions and uncover the truth about Christianity. Before I even start this video, I just want to say it literally feels like Satan is trying to stop me from making this video. This is now my third attempt at trying to make this video. The first attempt, the desktop audio wasn't on. The second attempt, my microphone wasn't working. I for some reason just could not get this video out. But this time I've checked everything. I made sure everything's working properly. Small tangent aside, today I want to be covering this video from Give Me an Answer, where the debater, if you can call them that, brings up several common arguments that atheists bring up, and I wanted to bring up and talk about those arguments with the help of my friend Cliffe, because this is Give Me an Answer. So I'll be discussing what the atheists are not, I'm not sure what their beliefs are, but we can assume that they're not Christian. I'm gonna be going over what they're saying, as well as using Cliffe to back up some of my points if indeed he does that. So let's go ahead and get started.
I was raised a Catholic, and I think Jesus was a fantastic man that everybody should learn about his life.
How did you find out about Jesus?
I was taught.
By whom?
Through going to church and my family.
So why did you trust a priest in a Catholic church and your family to tell you the accurate truth about Jesus?
Really, because religion perpetuates brainwashing. That's the only way to say it. When you take a child and you teach them from day one that they have to go to church once a week, and it's just like learning a language. If you ask me to speak Chinese right now, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if I grew up in China, it would be second nature to me.
Now, the problem with this argument is he's applying it to religion specifically, but when you take a step back and try to apply it to anything else, it just does not make any sense. And I'll take his example. Let's say that I grew up in America and I wanted to teach my child Chinese. People probably would not automatically assume that I'm teaching my child Chinese just because I want them to be a Chinese citizen, or I want them to identify as being Chinese. No, you wouldn't assume that. You would just assume that I'm trying to teach my child things so that when eventually they do learn to think for themselves, that they can use the information that I taught them to make a educated guess. And to say that just because you grew up in a Christian household will automatically make you more likely to be Christian, that's just, maybe it's true that you're more likely to be Christian, but eventually I think anybody, no matter what your religious belief is, can agree that at some point you have to make a choice and think for yourself. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is teaching your child something does not automatically make it to where they have to believe that thing. Yeah, sure, some religions are like that, but if you just read the Bible, you would know that Christianity is not like that at all. Islam, for example, forces people to be in their religion. If they're not, they kill them. Christians have rarely, but very rarely, ever done anything like that. True Christians, though, would never do that. Teaching your child religion does not force it on them. And this person just merely existing kind of disproves his point automatically. If you grew up in a Christian household and then you end up not being Christian, that doesn't really prove your point of you kind of have to believe in Christianity if you grew up with it.
Religion, think about baptism, okay? What is baptism? Why is it so important? Why was the idea that baptism is everything so perpetuated? You know what baptism is? You are making the choice for a child that can't even make up its mind yet. You see? You've already indoctrinated them into a belief system.
Where does Jesus talk about infant baptism? Where does Paul or Peter or James talk about infant baptism?
How about John?
Where does anywhere in the Bible is infant baptism talked about? So I agree with you. You see, sir, we agree. Infant baptism is found nowhere in the Bible.
And just extra side note here, you would be a fool to say that infant baptism forces Christianity onto a child. Right? Baptism doesn't even force Christianity onto an adult. It's just something that happens. Now, using common sense, we can agree that an infant child is not going to remember their baptism. So why in the world would it affect anything? It just doesn't make any sense. It's just kind of a stinger, but it's a argument that has no real substance.
Okay.
So my question remains on the table, sir. What is your source of information about Jesus? Why did you trust that source? Be it the Catholic priest, be it your mom and dad?
Okay, fine. Yes.
What if we say
because I was
Muhammad?
raised since this big to know and taught. That's why you trusted.
Okay? I had to be a
It's learned.
skeptic. I was not going to trust mom and dad and the local priest or minister to tell me the truth about Jesus.
You don't trust your mom.
I have to go to the eyewitness testimonies.
Okay.
Which have been
That's a
changed.
whole-
That's right,
They
sir.
were written.
I am
That's a
not
whole
going to
other
build
debate.
my life on what mom and dad tell me.
That's a whole other debate because the Bible
You
has
have
been
to
rewritten
think
about
things
4
through
times.
yourself.
All right. Well, you just mentioned to me that the Bible has been rewritten many times.
First thing I immediately noticed is he just completely disregards the argument, probably because Cliffe made a good point and there wasn't really any way to argue against it. But yeah, Cliffe basically just said, summarized basically what I just said, which is it's kind of your responsibility to decide things for yourself. People can't decide that for you. Ultimately, sure, it might take some time because you're a child, obviously. When you're a child, it's your parents' responsibility to decide things for you. But there's gonna eventually come a point where you are going to have to, you're gonna make actions and you are going to be the one responsible for those actions. So if you're a Christian as an adult, because you were raised as a Christian, you're eventually gonna have to answer, whether it's to yourself or somebody else, why you chose to be or why you chose to remain a Christian.
And pieces of it have been excluded and are still being found right now. So what you're saying is that your first-hand source that you're talking about has been used. King James rewrote the Bible for a reason, okay? And before our political systems were able to control the masses, religion controlled the masses. Religion was government.
All right. King James in the early 1600s did not translate the Hebrew Old Testament or the Greek New Testament. He didn't know the languages.
I'm not saying he did it himself. He was
He
the king.
hired
He told someone
Hebrew
to do
scholars and Greek scholars.
it. Right, okay.
They did not change anything.
How do you know?
Because I've studied the Hebrew Old Testament and the Greek New Testament.
Do you know Hebrew and Greek?
I had to learn Hebrew and Greek in seminary.
The way that they
And
taught, the
I
way that they
know
spoke it at
that
the
the
time
Old
that
Testament was
revealed.
written in Hebrew and the New Testament was written in Greek. Now, you raise a great question, which is, why should we trust Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to give us accurate historical information?
Okay, the topic's slipping away from me a little bit. I just wanted to bring up that this is another common argument that I'm sure every single Christian has heard, which is that the Bible has been mistranslated or it's not perfect or whatever. And obviously, since there are different translations, not every translation is perfect. But the general idea behind the messages have remained the same. And this argument doesn't have a left foot to stand on with just some basic research. Now, it's up to you to choose whether you want to actually study Greek and Hebrew to prove to yourself. But yeah, there's this is just an argument used to really against uneducated Christians, probably, to be like, ha, gotcha, sort of thing. But yeah, that doesn't that argument is, I wouldn't even know if I would call it enough to be an argument.
Hopefully you have some tests, sir, that you use to determine historical reliability. Myself, I've got 4 tests. I use them on Suetonius, Herodotus, U.S. history, Greek history, any history. Nothing sacred about my tests. Come up with your own. My 4 tests are internal consistency, meaning by that, are there contradictions within the text that point to massive confusion? When you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll notice a tremendous internal consistency. No contradictions. Different perspectives? Yes. Second test, literary style. Once upon a time in the land of Nod, Wink and Blink and Nod took a boat ride. Obviously, that's fairy tale. It's not the literary style of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John use historical narrative, like a newspaper reportage, as literary style. Third test, archaeology. Are we talking about Jesus and the island of Atlantis? No. We're talking about archaeologically verifiable Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Rome, Sea of Galilee. Fourth test. Come on, man. 2,000 years ago, in the first century, these guys write these Gospels. Haven't you ever played telephone? You whisper a secret in the ear of the person next to you. They whisper it in the ear of the person next to them. Yes, I played that game. Yes, the secret's totally perverted. That is not how we have the Gospels handed down to us. Sir, the Gospels that we have...
And this is I not really have anything to do with the argument. I just wanted to bring this up. Muslims say that the Quran is perfectly, or at least I've heard Muslims say that the Quran is perfectly preserved through word of mouth. But this point alone, which should just be common sense, but this point alone proves that just because something comes or is preserved through actually speaking, it doesn't mean that it's actually perfectly preserved. Now, is the Quran actually perfectly preserved? To be honest, I have no idea, but I really don't care. But yeah, that argument doesn't make any sense.
Have today in English are based on over 5,200 Greek manuscripts, all agreeing to an infinitesimal degree. Sir, there is no document from antiquity that could even approach the New Testament Gospels in manuscript evidence. So the overwhelming evidence is the Gospels are accurate historically.
Yes, Cliff made a really good point. And the last thing that I want to say real quick is that there is a lot of evidence backing up the Bible and Christianity. And when when non-Christians say that there isn't, it's like I've said, it's a lack of knowledge. And that's why I think knowledge is really important. That's why one of the main reasons I created this channel is because I feel like since knowledge is so important when it comes to not just debating Christianity, but really anything, is no matter what side you're on, understanding and learning evidence from both sides is crucial in order to make a point. The person in this video, it almost feels like they got just they searched up generic atheist arguments on the internet and went up to Cliff and said that to him with no substance. You need to, when it comes to true debates, you need to know what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're just going to be made out to look a fool. And so what I want to end with here is real quick, whether atheist or Christian, I encourage you to, before you try to debate on a certain topic, to just know what you're talking about. We're all guilty of trying to start arguments or continue arguments that we haven't done enough research on, but that's all the more reason why we need to do the research for ourselves. But that's going to be it for today. If there's any points that I didn't bring up, or if there are points that I did bring up that you don't agree with, please let me know in the comments. If you guys liked the video, be sure to leave a like. I would greatly appreciate it. And I hope you guys all have a very God bless day.